Can you hear me? Is this on?
Yep.
Yep. All right.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Sheeling, for that wonderful talk. So my question revolves around what Secretary Schultz has told me on the 5 times that I've met him. I keep asking, what's the best way to return all this money? Because what's shaping up in Washington appears to be corporate and payroll tax cuts. That seems to be the talk of the town, right? And I keep saying, household dividends, where does that stand? And what he says, and I want your opinion about this, is he says, it's got to go back to households for 2 reasons. Accountability and politics. When you give it all back to households, you create the political stability. You're sinking the hook in the public, like the Alaska Fund, so that the next political regime isn't going to sweep it away. And so that raises a question for me is, have the economists modeled the impact of political stability on the cost of money in the transition to a low-carbon economy? There's going to be a lot of lending, and that the rates of interest that will be demanded by the lenders will be dependent on how they perceive the risk. And if you can dampen the risk politically, wouldn't that lower the cost of money and create a good impact on the economy? Has anyone looked at that?
I don't think so. When you say the risk, you mean the risk of this policy changing? Is that what you're talking about? Or the risk of climate change?
The risk of in the next presidential
All right,
someone saying we're going to get rid of this regressive socialist economy tax.
What British Columbia did, as many of you know, was to reduce corporate income taxes and to reduce the personal income tax, the marginal income tax rates of the lowest 2 income quintiles, tax brackets in British Columbia. So this is about $1 billion, a little over $1 billion in revenue for the province now. If you're going to get rid of the carbon tax in British Columbia, we're looking at $1 billion hole in a budget that's not a whole lot bigger than that. What are you going to replace it with? So that's exactly, I like what you said, it's kind of the hook. It made it kind of undoable. It made it undoable. It made it irreversible to some extent. Maybe that's what really scares some people about it, is that if you're going to kind of make it revenue neutral, then getting rid of it means coming up with more revenue. So, yeah. I don't think economists have looked at that. No, I don't think economists have spent a lot of time looking at the political economy of a carbon tax. Do I call folks, or?
Oh, no, let's get out. Okay. We'll go next, and then you'll be up.
Okay, in the dividend to families, what happens to undocumented immigrants, if anything? What do they even get?
I don't know. If they're completely undocumented and they don't pay, they don't have a taxpayer ID number, they don't get the dividend. I don't think there's a way.
Is there an indirect benefit, maybe?
There could be indirect benefits, sure, right? They are in an economy, an informal economy, where it's kind of likely that the poorest among us share a lot of things with undocumented workers. And so that if you buoy some of the poorest people that are documented among them, then that helps them. It doesn't help them as much as, it helps other families. That would probably be my best guess. For undocumented people, if they've got some sort of a network of people among them, then they get some indirect benefit.
So I wanted to ask you about kind of an unrelated question, the question of stranded assets. A lot of you take all of the stock in the country, in the world, a lot of corporate stock, a significant percent of that valuation is either plants that have to be retired early or else assets in the ground.
Yeah.
And if all the oil we have already proven and booked as assets is burned, it'll probably bring us up to the limit. So how does is that going to have a big impact or reduced market valuation based on those assets that will be unbooked or retired?
I think it would. It can't be too scary. It's been a long time since Rex Tillerson of Exxon said we're in favor of a carbon tax. It's been a really long time. I started doing research on the executives in the oil sands or tar sands in Alberta about 10 years ago. At that time, there were CEOs that were very quietly saying, yeah, we would favor a carbon tax. Alberta already has something like a carbon tax. They only pay a carbon tax above a certain emissions intensity. It doesn't quite work the same way, but they're kind of used to the idea. But gosh, as Dr. Hansen said this morning, these are very smart and talented people. They have probably kind of made some projections forward about how much of their proven reserves they can actually exploit, and it can't scare them too much. I went on a tour of Suncor's oil sands production facility up in Fort McMurray about 3 years ago, and they led these tours, and they said, you know, we would favor a carbon tax. I don't know why that doesn't translate into political will. Perhaps it already has in Alberta. If you know, there's been an earth-shattering election in Alberta. But for whatever reason, it hasn't. I just don't think the stranded assets problem is quite as severe as the asset owners make it out to be.
Actually, sir. Oh, sorry. No, but you're you're next. Okay, I see. And from there, I think we're just going to form a line like we did in the rest of the conferences.
So I've had the case made to me that the effect of a monthly dividend on the economy will be highly stimulative and effective, and yet there have been no studies, that any carbon studies have not looked at that. So do you have a comment on that? Have there been any studies that have looked at the impact? I mean, I think Remy probably did, but other studies on the monthly dividend, or do you know of economists or yourself have made any hypothesizing about the difference between an annual, quarterly versus the monthly dividend?
So if you're talking about the timing of the payments, I don't know. So someone is telling you that, like, if you distribute the money monthly, that's better than distributing it
Because it's more
quarterly.
stimulative on the economy, yes.
I thought it was fairer.
You thought what?
I thought it was more fair in the sense
More
that
fair? Yeah, it would be more fair.
economic resources that.
I know. If you're poor and you live hand to mouth, a monthly check will give you a lot more. I would bet that has not been done. I would bet that, I've been on top of the Resources of the Future, Remy, and a handful of other studies now. To my knowledge, all they do is look at an annual payment.
Do you think there's
Maybe
merit?
more. Yeah, I think there is. I think there is. Just because if you live hand to mouth, that money makes more. Here's another one. Dallas Bertraw, I kind of saw him at the keynote speech, and he said, here's one that economists really love, is if you took the dividend and there was this button where you could invest it in a college fund or education or something, that grows the economy. Giving poor people an access to education is the best thing you can do. It may not, it may be, you know, might make their pickup truck more expensive to operate. But there are, I don't know about that. So.
Actually, this is somewhat along the same lines. You may be familiar that the IMF recently reduced a report about the effect of income inequality globally. It cites a quote from Andrew Jackson at the beginning: "We could measure the health of our society not at its apex but at its base." Anyway, I have to admit I haven't read the article in detail, but I'm wondering.
That's our Andrew Jackson, not a Canadian one?
I'm assuming if it's a global organization
Okay.
quoting Andrew Jackson, it's probably
Yeah.
the Andrew Jackson.
Okay, yeah, right.
So I guess the question is, and Bill McGibbon has said the same thing in terms of the climate march. Two problems: income inequality and climate change. One solution. What's your sense of how CFP would help on the income inequality?
I think it would help a little bit. I would personally be a little bit careful about overselling it. I mean, we're not talking about a lot. And I mean, as you kind of remember, kind of West Virginia and Mississippi are get the lightest touch from a carbon tax and carbon fee and dividend proposal. They're still kind of on net, worse off. But I do think there's something to that. I mentioned this at the panel discussion this morning. I think income equality has just kind of fallen into our lap. As if we're kind of advocating for climate change, this is something else we can say. I would just not want to oversell that and say we're not going to address income equality. It's not the solution to income equality. I think that access to education, the more research I get into this is actually my second area of research is income and wealth inequality. Access to education is just huge. And so, like Mark Reynolds kind of said, though, I'm wary of kind of adding too much onto the carbon fee and dividend proposal. But this is better than anything else in climate change for the poorer people.
That's because it dilutes the message.
Yeah, it dilutes the message.
Less labor focus.
Yeah, this is one nice clean, this is another reason why I come out in favor of carbon fee and dividend. One nice, clean, self-contained thing. It's almost hard, although I know Congress will try, to kind of insert something into a carbon fee and dividend thing. But this is it. This is what I love about Citizens Climate Lobby. It's just devoid of any cynicism. And here's a proposal that is actually assuming kind of the absence of special pork barrel projects that could kind of dilute the project, the proposal. And so, yeah, I think there's kind of a, I don't know, it's a proposal with good karma.
I'm Mike Russell from Naples.
Can't hear you.
Trying to avoid you. Just speak right into it.
You mentioned,
Yes.
Go ahead, at your mouth.
you mentioned that Rex Tillerman. Is there an economic reason why the oil companies in Europe have agreed to carbon tax and now Exxon and Standard Oil have not? Carbon price.
Well, recently, if this is what you're referring to, Statoil and Shell are, I think they're kind of in the oil business, and they've started criticizing coal. So I think finally, I've been wondering when this is going to happen, when coal people and oil people start to see a cleave in their interests. Up until now, I think they felt like they were in the same boat against us tree huggers. But a number of oil companies, particularly the European oil companies, have started being pretty vocal about, we should do away with coal. And I think they probably see some slight advantage in being an oil company as opposed to a coal company. This has caused consternation in the United States among coal companies. But I think that's probably why. I think, oil is better than coal. Hi.
I'm Jeffrey Hyman, Rockville, Maryland. With the carbon fee and dividend, is the carbon tax rises over time, faster the better. The fossil fuel industry should go out of business entirely. The sooner the better. I think that when the fossil fuel industry goes out of business, then and where the economy is run on all carbon-free energy, there won't be any more carbon tax revenue coming in. So we won't have revenue to be funding the dividend anymore. So maybe we'll want to be keeping the dividend around, so maybe it should be decoupled from carbon tax revenue.
But then we're just collecting money, right? We're not.
Maybe the dividend could continue to be funded by taxing something else, I guess.
You could. But then look, I have nothing against kind of redistribution. I think a lot of people are talking about for income and wealth inequality purposes anyway. If we have a carbon tax that works too well and eventually drives up carbon emissions, then then that's good.
Yeah.
Finding a way to address, kind of try and continue to address income and wealth inequality, that's going to have to, something else is going to have to do that. So, and there are people out there that say we should have some sort of a global wealth tax, or make, you know, we have very low personal income taxes for the richest among us. The top marginal tax rate is not very high. We can certainly make that high.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm Sam from Houston, Texas. Just wanted to say thank you for a really edifying
Closer.
answer. A lot of questions.
He's just thanking me.
Yeah. You guys hear if I shout instead of nice?
No, just hold it up to your mouth.
Okay. Now my question was, have we nailed down a figure that we can quote to staffers?
What kind of a figure? A figure for staff? What kind of a figure?
A figure for the administrative cost of implementing this reform.
No.
Implementing the
I'll give you a figure. Can you guys all hear me if I should shout? Yeah. No, all right. Back to the microphone. All right, so Sam's question was how much is going to cost to administer it then, right? You know, someone, not me, asked the British Columbia Ministry of Finance once how much it costs to administer the BC carbon tax. The answer was about $1 million out of a provincial budget that's much bigger than that. The carbon tax brings in about $1 billion. So about 1/1000th of the cost of the carbon tax went into hiring $1 million in the cabinet level secretary plus 8 staffers. That's how much it costs to carry out the British Columbia carbon tax. For us, it would be trivial. It's, you know, we have an Internal Revenue Service, and they're pretty good at what they do, actually. This would be kind of a slightly different set of kind of skills, but collecting a carbon, that's one of the things that is good about carbon tax. It's cheap for a government to set up. And better than cap and trade in the sense that, you know, we could do cap and trade in the United States. We did it for sulfur dioxide emissions. We could do it for carbon dioxide, but could Indonesia do a cap and trade program? Whoa, I don't know about that. Could they collect a carbon tax? Well, they collect sales taxes pretty efficiently. So that, I think, is something within the reach of developing countries as well. A figure, I think this is what you could say. In British Columbia, about 1/1000th, about 1/10 of a penny of every dollar in carbon tax went to administering the program. And that's British Columbia. They don't, you know, it's 4 million people.
Thank you.
Sure.
I'm Bart from Walla Walla. Naomi Klein says that the stock market